The sheriff's deputy stood at my doorstep, holding a thick manila envelope that would change everything. Behind him, my neighbor Karen Wellington wore that smug smile I'd grown to despise over the past 6 months. "Ma'am, you're being served," the deputy said, his voice professionally neutral. As I opened the documents right there on my porch, my hands trembling with rage, I saw the astronomical number, $75,000 in damages for willful obstruction of property value. But Karen had no idea she just activated a trap I'd been meticulously planning for weeks. What she didn't know was that 3 security cameras had been recording this exact moment, and the FBI fraud investigator I'd been working with was watching everything unfold from his car across the street. And trust me, you'll want to stick around for how this ends. If you love real-life justice stories where karma shows up wearing a badge, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next one. Let me take you back to where this nightmare began. 6 months ago, I was living peacefully in my dream home in Monterey Heights, California. The property had been in my family for 3 generations. My grandfather planted that magnificent coastal redwood in 1952, the day my father was born. It stood 85 feet tall, a majestic guardian watching over our 2-acre property. The house itself was modest, but the land was priceless, especially that tree. Karen Wellington moved in next door in March, purchasing the contemporary glass monstrosity that some tech entrepreneur had built. $5 million, the real estate gossip said. Floor-to-ceiling windows, infinity pool, the works. She introduced herself with champagne and promises of being the best neighbor ever. That lasted exactly 2 weeks. The first complaint came via a handwritten note on monogrammed stationery. "Dear neighbor," it began, dripping with false sweetness, "I'm hoping we can discuss your lovely tree. While I'm sure it has sentimental value, it's unfortunately blocking the ocean view from my master suite. Perhaps we could explore trimming options?" I responded politely, explaining the tree was protected under California law as a heritage specimen. I even included copies of the relevant statutes. That's when things escalated. Karen hired a certified arborist. Later I discovered he was her nephew with a freshly printed online certificate who declared the tree diseased and dangerous. The report was so obviously fabricated that my real arborist laughed when he read it. But Karen wasn't deterred. She began a campaign of bureaucratic terrorism. Every week brought new complaints to different agencies. The fire department received anonymous tips about fire hazards. The health department got reports of dangerous falling branches. City planning was told about unpermitted structures near the tree. Each inspection found nothing, but each one disrupted my life. The psychological warfare intensified. She installed industrial floodlights aimed directly at my bedroom window, claiming they were for security. She hired landscapers to work at 6 a.m. every Saturday. Their leaf blowers mysteriously always pointed toward my property. She even started hosting loud parties every Sunday night, with speakers positioned right at our property line. Then came the offers to buy my property. First, it was subtle, a friendly suggestion that she knew investors who'd pay above market value. And when I declined, the offers became aggressive. Real estate agents began showing up uninvited. I received daily calls from mysterious buyers. And one morning, I found a contract taped to my door with a sticky note. Last chance before things get expensive. I started documenting everything. Every interaction, every complaint, every suspicious incident went into my journal. I installed security cameras, hidden ones, not the obvious ones she could see. I hired a private investigator who uncovered something fascinating. Karen had done this before. 3 previous neighbors in 2 different states had mysteriously decided to sell after disputes with her. The turning point came when I caught her on camera at 3 a.m. spraying something on my tree. The next morning, leaves on one side were brown and withering. The laboratory results confirmed herbicide, specifically a commercial-grade product that required a license to purchase. That's when I knew this wasn't just about a view. This was about forcing me out to buy my land. I consulted with James Morrison, a property rights attorney who specialized in what he called predatory neighbor disputes. His eyes lit up when he reviewed my evidence. "She's following a playbook," he said, showing me similar cases from across the country. "But she made one crucial mistake, the herbicide. That's criminal vandalism, potentially interstate fraud if she's done this before." We began building our case methodically. The private investigator dug deeper, finding 2 families who'd been forced to sell to Karen or her shell companies. Both had experienced mysterious property damage before capitulating. One family's century-old oak had died from sudden oak death, except the pathogen wasn't native to that region. Meanwhile, Karen escalated further. She filed a formal complaint with the HOA, except we didn't have an HOA. She'd created fake documents, complete with forged signatures from other neighbors, attempting to establish retroactive HOA authority. She didn't know I'd already contacted every property owner on our street, and they'd all signed affidavits denying any HOA participation. The week before she served me with the lawsuit, I noticed surveyors on her property. They were remarkably interested in the area near my tree. When I checked the county records, I discovered she'd filed a boundary dispute, claiming my tree was actually on her property. The survey she submitted showed property lines that didn't match any official record going back to 1910. That's when James brought in his secret weapon, a forensic surveyor who specialized in property fraud. Using ground-penetrating radar and historical aerial photographs, we could prove not only were her surveys fraudulent, but that she'd actually built her pool house 6 feet onto my property. The morning after being served, I sat in James Morrison's office surrounded by bankers' boxes of evidence, but the real bombshell was on his laptop screen, a video confession from Karen's previous victim. She told me she'd make my life hell until I sold, the elderly woman from Arizona said, tears streaming down her face. She poisoned my garden, killed my dog with antifreeze, and when I still wouldn't sell, she planted drugs in my grandson's car. James paused the video. This establishes a pattern of racketeering. We're not just defending you, we're taking her down. The FBI fraud investigator, Special Agent David Chen, had been tracking Karen Wellington for 2 years under different names. She's been doing this since 2015, he explained, spreading files across the conference table. 7 properties, 3 states, always the same pattern. She identifies properties with development potential, harasses the owners into selling cheap, then flips them for massive profits. But they'd never had a victim fight back with this much evidence. Karen's lawsuit claimed my tree had devalued her property by $75,000, citing the blocked view. But her filing contained a fatal flaw. She'd submitted photos that were digitally altered. Our tech expert proved the images had been manipulated to make my tree appear to block more of her view than it actually did. Even better, metadata showed the photos were taken from inside my property, meaning she'd trespassed to create false evidence. I hired my own surveyor, Richard Steinberg, a legendary figure in California property disputes. He'd literally written the textbook on boundary law. When he examined Karen's survey, he laughed out loud. This is amateur hour, he said, pointing to clear discrepancies. She's moved the boundary markers. Look at these GPS coordinates. They don't match the iron pins placed in 1948. We spent 3 days doing a comprehensive survey using LiDAR technology, documenting every inch of both properties. The discoveries were shocking. Not only had Karen built her pool house on my property, but she'd also illegally redirected a natural drainage channel, causing water to pool on my land. She'd installed underground cables without easements. Most damaging, we found evidence she'd hired someone to dig near my tree's root system, trying to destabilize it. The excavation marks were fresh, maybe 2 weeks old. That's when things got dangerous. I started noticing a van parked outside my house at odd hours. My security cameras caught someone attempting to tamper with my electrical meter at 2 a.m. My car tires were slashed twice in 1 week. Then came the anonymous letter. Trees fall. Accidents happen. Sell now. I immediately took it to Agent Chen, who confirmed it matched threatening letters from Karen's previous schemes. We decided to set a trap. James filed our countersuit, but deliberately made it look weak, focusing only on the herbicide damage. We wanted Karen overconfident. Meanwhile, Agent Chen coordinated with local law enforcement to establish surveillance. We installed hidden cameras covering every angle of my property, including infrared units that could capture nighttime activity. The bait worked perfectly. 3 nights after our weak countersuit, Karen took action. At 2:47 a.m., my cameras captured everything in crystal clarity. A man in dark clothing approached my tree with a chainsaw, but he wasn't alone. Karen was there, directing him, pointing where to cut. They wanted to make it look like natural wind damage, creating a weak point that would fail in the next storm. But they never got the chance to start cutting. The moment the chainsaw roared to life, floodlights blazed and police officers emerged from hidden positions. Police dropped the weapon? The man dropped the chainsaw and tried to run, but was tackled within seconds. Karen stood frozen, her face a mask of shock and rage. As they cuffed her, she screamed, "That tree is on my property!" I have surveys to prove it. The next morning brought beautiful chaos. News vans lined our street. Tech heiress arrested in tree assassination plot, read the local headline. But the real victory came when investigators searched Karen's home. They found detailed plans for developing my property into luxury condos, contracts with builders, even architectural renderings. She'd been so confident in forcing me out that she'd already started planning construction. They also found her playbook, a literal handbook she'd created on forcing property sales. It included psychological tactics, legal maneuvers, and even chemical formulas for killing different tree species without detection. One section was titled, Making Life Unbearable, a 90-Day Timeline. My case was on page 47, with notes like, stubborn but will break, and attachment to tree is weakness to exploit. The criminal charges were serious: vandalism, trespassing, criminal threat, conspiracy, and attempted destruction of protected heritage tree. But Agent Chen was building something bigger, a RICO case that connected all her previous schemes. Each victim was being contacted, their cases reopened. Karen had made millions through her property harassment scheme, and now it was all unraveling. My attorney prepared an amended countersuit that was anything but weak. We sought damages for trespass, nuisance, intentional infliction of emotional distress, fraud, and violation of timber trespass laws. In California, timber trespass carries triple damages. The herbicide damage alone to my heritage tree was assessed at $50,000, which meant $150,000 in damages. But that was just the beginning. The surveyor situation exploded when Richard Steinberg presented his findings to the county. Not only had Karen filed fraudulent surveys, but she'd bribed a county clerk to alter digital records. The clerk, facing criminal charges, immediately cooperated with investigators. He revealed Karen had paid him $10,000 to change boundary records for 3 properties on our street. She'd been planning to take over the entire block. The deposition room was packed with lawyers, court reporters, and cameras. Karen sat across from me, her attorney whispering furiously in her ear, but nothing could prepare them for what came next. James Morrison stood up, walked to the screen, and pressed play. The room watched in stunned silence as security footage showed Karen, 6 weeks before moving in, touring my property with a fake real estate agent while I was at work. She'd been planning this before she even bought her house. I want that lot, her voice echoed clearly in the recording. Whatever it takes. The evidence had come from the most unlikely source, my elderly neighbor, Mrs. Chen, who'd installed a doorbell camera that happened to overlook my driveway. She'd kept 2 years of footage on her cloud storage, never deleting anything. When she heard about my troubles, she offered us access. What we found changed the entire case. 17 separate instances of Karen trespassing, including one where she measured my tree with professional surveying equipment, taking photos and samples. But the real smoking gun came from Karen's own husband, Robert Wellington. He'd filed for divorce the day after her arrest, and his lawyer reached out to mine. My client has information relevant to your case, he'd said. Robert arrived at our meeting looking exhausted, carrying a briefcase full of documents. I've been documenting everything for 2 years, he said. I knew this day would come. She's sick, and she won't stop until someone stops her. Robert's evidence was devastating. Bank records showing payments to criminals for property services, email exchanges with fake arborists, corrupt inspectors, and hired vandals, a spreadsheet tracking her schemes across 7 properties with projected profits exceeding $12 million. Most damning was a recorded conversation where Karen explicitly said, "If the tree mysteriously dies, she'll be so heartbroken she'll sell immediately. Grandfather's tree or not, everything has a price." The private investigator had uncovered another victim, a Marine veteran in Oregon who'd lost his family farm to Karen's tactics. He'd committed suicide 6 months after being forced to sell, leaving a note that said, "She took everything." His daughter wanted justice and agreed to testify. She provided recordings of Karen laughing about her father's distress, calling him weak and pathetic for caring about worthless dirt. Agent Chen's team had tracked Karen's financial web through 3 states and 17 shell companies. She'd been laundering the profits through real estate flips, hiding assets in offshore accounts. The pattern was clear: identify emotional property attachments, exploit them ruthlessly, force sales at below market prices, then flip for massive profits. My tree wasn't just blocking her view. My entire property was meant to become her next luxury development. We discovered she'd hired a psychologist to create profiles of her targets. Mine was disturbingly detailed. Single woman, age 34, software engineer, inherited property. Strong emotional attachment to grandfather, deceased 2019. Tree represents family continuity. Isolated, works from home. Anxiety disorder documented in medical hack. Breaking point. Threat to tree will cause psychological collapse. She'd literally hacked my medical records to find my weaknesses. The forensic arborist we hired made a shocking discovery. The herbicide wasn't just meant to damage the tree, It was a specific cocktail designed to cause a delayed reaction. The tree would have appeared healthy for 6 months, then suddenly collapsed. "It's brilliant and evil," he explained. By the time the tree fell, proving deliberate poisoning would be nearly impossible. This formula isn't published anywhere. Someone with advanced chemistry knowledge created this. That led us to Dr. Martin Hayes, a disgraced chemist who'd lost his license for creating illegal pesticides. Financial records showed Karen had paid him $30,000 through a shell company. When faced with conspiracy charges, he immediately cooperated. His testimony was chilling. She wanted something undetectable that would make the tree fall toward the house. She specifically requested it look like an act of God. The HOA fraud unraveled spectacularly when we subpoenaed the company that printed the fake documents. They'd been told it was for a movie prop, but security footage showed Karen picking up the order herself. She'd even created a fake website for our non-existent HOA, complete with bylaws specifically targeting heritage trees. The web developer, when questioned, revealed Karen had paid him to backdate the site to make it appear 5 years old. My tech background became crucial when I analyzed the digital harassment. Karen had hired hackers to attack my work systems, hoping to get me fired and force a sale. They'd attempted to plant illegal content on my computers, sent spoofed emails to my clients, and even tried to access my bank accounts. Digital forensics traced everything back to IP addresses linked to Karen's properties. The cybercrimes alone carried 20-year federal sentences. The neighborhood impact was severe. 3 families admitted they'd been considering selling just to escape the chaos Karen created. She'd been systematically destroying our community to build her real estate empire. One neighbor, a retired judge, said, "In 40 years on the bench, I've never seen such calculated evil disguised as neighbor disputes." The California Heritage Tree Society joined our case as interveners. My grandfather's redwood wasn't just any tree. It was registered as a Millennium Monument, one of 500 trees statewide protected under special preservation laws. Damaging it wasn't just vandalism. It was a crime against California's natural heritage. The Society's lawyer explained that full restoration costs, if the tree died, would exceed $500,000, and that was before punitive damages. The courtroom was standing room only. Media outlets had picked up the story. The tree that brought down a real estate empire was trending nationally. Karen entered in designer clothes and perfect makeup, still playing the victim. But when Judge Patricia Thornton, known for her zero tolerance of property fraud, took the bench, Karen's confident facade cracked. "I've reviewed the evidence," the judge began, her voice cutting through the murmur. "In 30 years on the bench, I've never seen such systematic, calculated cruelty disguised as civil disputes. Mrs. Wellington, you're about to learn that California takes property rights very seriously." James Morrison opened with devastating precision. The presentation started with a simple photo of my grandfather planting the tree in 1952, then methodically built to show Karen's 2-year campaign of terror. Each piece of evidence was time-stamped, verified, and corroborated. The jury's faces shifted from skepticism to shock to visible anger as the full scope emerged. When James played the audio of Karen laughing about the Oregon veteran's suicide, juror number 4 started crying. Karen's attorney, Marcus Fitzgerald, a high-priced shark from Los Angeles, tried to paint her as an eccentric rich woman whose methods were unconventional but not criminal. His argument fell apart when Agent Chen took the stand. The FBI agent calmly presented evidence of interstate fraud, racketeering, and conspiracy involving 12 victims across 3 states. "This wasn't neighbor disputes," he stated. "This was organized crime wearing suburban camouflage." Then came the surprise witness nobody expected, not even Karen. James called Margaret Wellington, Karen's estranged mother. The elderly woman walked slowly to the stand, never looking at her daughter. "I've watched my daughter destroy people for profit since she was 25, she testified. "I'm here because someone needs to stop her. She destroyed our family the same way, manipulation, lies, and cruelty, until everyone surrendered to her will." Margaret revealed that Karen had done this to her own siblings, forcing them to sell their inheritance shares of family properties through similar tactics. She produced letters Karen had written, outlining her philosophy. Emotional attachment to property is weakness. Exploit it, break them, profit. Only money matters. One brother had been driven to bankruptcy, another had fled the country. "She's not sick," Margaret said firmly. "She's evil, and she chose to be." The forensic accountant testified next, revealing the full extent of Karen's profits. Through her schemes, she'd accumulated nearly $15 million in illegally obtained real estate profits. But she'd made a crucial mistake. She hadn't paid taxes on most of it. The IRS criminal division was now involved, seeking $8 million in back taxes, plus penalties. Karen's face went white as she realized her financial empire was crumbling. My testimony was last. I spoke about my grandfather, the tree, and what home really meant. But I also presented something unexpected, a development plan I'd discovered in Karen's trash. She hadn't just wanted my property, she'd already sold it to Chinese investors for $40 million, contingent on her acquiring it. The entire block was to become Wellington Estates, a luxury development. Every family on our street was a target. She didn't see homes, I told the jury. She saw dollars per square foot. She didn't see our tree as a living monument to my grandfather's love. She saw an obstacle to ocean views that would add millions to condo prices. She didn't see neighbors. She saw victims. The defense's case collapsed spectacularly when Dr. Hayes, the chemist, testified under immunity. He revealed that Karen had asked him about poisoning methods that could cause heart attacks, making me too dead to refuse selling. She'd ultimately decided against it, only because murder investigations might delay property transfer. The courtroom gasped. Even Karen's attorney looked genuinely shocked. During cross-examination, Karen took the stand against her lawyer's advice. Her arrogance was her undoing. When asked about the veteran's suicide, she said, "I didn't make him kill himself. He was weak. In business, weak people lose." The courtroom erupted. The judge had to call for order 3 times. When asked about poisoning my tree, she actually smirked. It's just a tree. The fact she values wood over millions in development potential proves she doesn't deserve the property. The jury deliberated for exactly 93 minutes. Guilty on all counts: criminal conspiracy, fraud, vandalism of protected heritage tree, trespassing, harassment, cybercrime, tax evasion, and racketeering. The criminal penalties would be decided later, but the civil judgment was immediate. Actual damages: $500,000 for the tree, $250,000 for emotional distress, $180,000 for security and legal costs. But then came the punitive damages. The jury awarded $15 million, essentially everything Karen had stolen over the years. Judge Thornton added her own touch. "Mrs. Wellington, you've shown a callous disregard for everything that makes communities worthwhile. Therefore, in addition to damages, I'm issuing a permanent injunction. You are prohibited from purchasing residential property anywhere in California for the next 20 years. You're also required to send written apologies to every victim, complete 2,000 hours of community service, maintaining public gardens, and any violation will result in immediate imprisonment." But the biggest shock came after the verdict. Robert Wellington approached me with a document. "But this is the deed to Karen's house," he said. "It was in my name for tax purposes. I'm selling it to you for $1. Consider it partial restitution for what you've endured." Karen screamed obscenities as security restrained her. Her $5 million house was now mine. The aftermath was swift. Karen's other victims filed civil suits in their states. The IRS seized her assets. She was disbarred from the real estate industry nationally. Criminal trials were pending in 3 states. Her shell companies were dissolved, their assets distributed to victims. Within 6 months, Karen Wellington went from millionaire real estate mogul to federal prisoner, serving 12 years. Our neighborhood healed. I converted Karen's house into a community center, its floor-to-ceiling windows now showcasing my grandfather's tree. We established the Heritage Tree Protection Fund, with part of the settlement, providing free legal services to anyone facing similar property harassment. 300 cases have been resolved in 2 years. Mrs. Chen, who'd provided crucial doorbell footage, told me something I'll never forget. "Your grandfather would be proud. You didn't just save a tree, you saved the soul of our community." Standing beneath the redwood today, fully recovered and growing stronger, I realized something profound. Karen was wrong about emotional attachment being weakness. It's precisely because we love these spaces, these living monuments to our past, that we find strength to fight those who see only profit where we see home. Never let anyone tell you that fighting for what matters is futile. Sometimes standing your ground doesn't just save your property. It exposes empires built on others' misery. And sometimes, just sometimes, the good guys actually win. If you're facing Karen Wellington, document everything, network with neighbors, and never underestimate the power of truth backed by good lawyers. They count on you giving up. Prove them wrong.